While we are inviting folks in, please go ahead and put in the chat. Please go ahead and put in the chat one thing that you're thinking and one thing that you're feeling. And by one thing, I don't mean it has to be one thing. It could be
She coming toward me, catching on. Pull over, how crazy you drive me. I make promises to call. Mais moi, je marche à l'instant. Est-ce que tu sens cette énergie? Je vais ressentir ça jusqu'à la fin. Sinon c'est mort, je vais tracer ma route. C'est qui? C'est qui? Tu me vois pas venir, demande pas c'est qui. En I, j'arrive, y'a pas de débat, c'est moi la
started. About 1 more minute. Checking with y'all and how y'all are showing up today. Yo, real.
soir, pas de dodo, je veux ton corps. Bébé, laisse-moi être l'homme, je sais comment faire. Tu sais que je sais comment faire pour faire suer nos corps. Je veux ton corps. Bébé, prendre soin de moi, tu sais comment faire. Mais ce soir, pas de commentaires. Yeah. Tu connais ton sort, je vais commencer tout doucement. Comme ça, tu connais tous mes mouvements. Tout ça, mais cette fois ce sera différent. Crois-moi, je vais faire un peu plus violent.
All right. Thank you to all. Please keep on coming in. As I love here. What happened? For those of you who just joined, we're just go ahead and you can please share in the chat one thing that you're thinking, one thing that you're feeling. I think let's check in and hear what's going on for you. And while you're doing that, I want to do some intros to get us going. So some of you know me either because you work with me, because you're related to me, because we've seen you in passing, or because maybe Dr. Cammy has talked about me. But my name is Samira Abdul-Karim, and I am the co-founder of Hyphens and Spaces, along with my husband Yusuf, who is here somewhere circulating and got the kids on lock. Thank you so much. Today, I started Hyphens and Spaces about 5 years ago with Yusuf, and for the most part, we work in DEI consulting and culture and team consulting, supporting organizations of all types, but typically organizations that are focused on some type of social cause, be that art or healthcare or advocacy, academics, so forth. And so as you can imagine, both my organization and the folks that I work with at this time have been a lot of turmoil, considering what's going on in the world, and what's going on specifically politically. So my background is in organizational psychology, and I really support leaders and teams and individuals in moving through those human moments with more authenticity, with more love, with more connection. And not all workplaces don't always allow for that. So also supporting organizations and teams in creating their workplaces that allow for that authenticity and that love and that connection to show up in how we engage together. And also, this conversation has been inspired because, I've been working with people at work and I meet them and they're great and lovely. And then I'm like, why are you not the same person in your staff meeting? So we're having this conversation outside of our kind of work minds, so that we can invite our full selves into this conversation in a new way. And once again, we are here because um, we're on the topic of resilience and joy. We're really not here to tell you to be more resilient or positive. We're here to talk about what's actually happening in our bodies, in our minds, when our professional ground shifts, and why this moment might require a different approach than what we've relied on in the past to move through challenging professional shifts. And I'm joined by none other than the esteemed Dr. Cameron Froude, aka Dr. Cammy.
Thank you.
Um, Absolutely. Dr. Cammy is a fellowship trained medical family therapist who has helped thousands. I've seen her schedule, y'all. Thousands of individuals, families, couples navigate trauma and anxiety. Her the list of her certifications of the things that she's trained in is far too long. I think to really appreciate the different modalities that she can support folks with in relieving stress and understanding how how what you're going through impacts your body, and your physical well-being and your mental emotional well-being and that of your family system. And to be honest, there's just nobody else would have wanted to start this series with than Dr. Cami. And we've known each other for, yeah. Um, anyway, let's just say we've known each other for longer than we haven't known each other in our lifetime. So, we're in for a really beautiful conversation, and thank you so much for co-creating this space with us as we do that. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing, and we are going to get into our conversation together, shall we?
Let's do it.
Yay. So first, as we were kind of prepping for this conversation, we started with this resilience, and I was saying, you know, I think so many people are relying on resilience, and like that's probably kind of a problem. And Dr. Kim was like, Why is that a problem?" And I'm like, "Well, are we talking about resilience in the same way?" The answer was no. Let's get into it. So, Cammy, please start. What do you feel like oh, and by the way, this is a conversation that we're starting, and then we're gonna finish it together. So like please put into
Yeah.
the chat things that you want to bring up. You can just put the raise your hand emoji and just, talk out, and we'll kind of let us know that you want to say something, and we'll turn the floor over to you and make space for that. But please use the chat as well, to say anything that you want to say. And if you need any support, or any additional accommodation to like allow this space to be really beneficial for you, you can just directly message Yusef and he will take care of you for that.
Mhm. I think it's important to note that this talk emerges from a very long, deep friendship between Samira and me. We've been friends, like sisters, since we were about 15, and there hasn't been a day we haven't spoken. Um, Even though she's moved, I've stayed local. She's moved to Oman. She's moved everywhere, and we've maintained connections. So I think that that's an appropriate germ of this conversation, that resilience like starts with community.
Mm,
It starts with connection. Um, People can't, resilience wanes rapidly alone. And being in community and being in partnership with people is how resilience blossoms. I think sometimes like people, and myself included, like can think of resilience as like, how hard can I white knuckle my way through this moment and get to the other side of it and like come out victorious? And I've learned mostly through my clients, to be perfectly honest. I work with individuals with very, ranging but severe complex trauma. And resilience is definitely a wave. and it's not just something sort of to get through. So that's where we started a bit. I also was interested in, I work primarily at the individual level and I stop at essentially the family system. I'm a couple and family therapist. Samira works with institutions and community. So I was also interested, and someone wrote in the chat, like, I'm feeling, let me see what the exact word was, overwhelmed by what's happening in our country right now. So there's like resilience at the individual level, the couple level, the family level, the community level, the institutional level, and then like our societal level. So for me, I feel well versed in the individual, couple, and family, but Samira definitely comes in, and probably many of you come in with expertise at institutional and more cultural levels. Um, so there's also like, all that interplay too. Samira, when you think of, you know, I can definitely speak a little bit to couple and family, but when you think of like institutional community, be curious if there's like any social workers or like community activists here who may be able to help with the community side. But when you think of institutions and like cultural resilience, what comes up for you? You're muted, muted, muted. We're going back to 2020.
I
You're
know,
muted.
right?
You're
The
muted.
button. But what I think the when organizations say we want to be a resilient organization, what it really means is we want people to continue to work through everything without slowing down.
Mhm,
Um, and I think when you're engaging with people, I think what people are interested in, and what resilience, what within that institutional framework, I think it's what folks are interested in is in grounding and alignment. Like basically because we're experiencing this disruption, are we still going to be ourselves,
mhm,
right? Or do we need to, is there, is how we're operating, is what we believe, is what we stand for, is any of that under threat because of something that's going on outside of us and outside of our control? And kind of like who are we going to be in the face of that? And that I think that question is true for individuals, and should be true for institutions, though that's not always the way that people actually operate or organizations actually operate in the real world. And so that like, who am I going to be in the face of it? Is that was the core question for me, that I think even inspired this conversation to start with this conversation, because it's like before you try to address whatever it is, you got to ground down in like, who am I being?
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
I think so many times who we are, our default, when it comes to, well, you know what, I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna speak to everybody. I know for as like a, particularly as a Black woman, as a Muslim, like I've been in a lot of situations where I have had to, where I've been challenged, or there's been assumptions about me, or where I felt like, okay, I need to, I've been overlooked or whatever the case, right? And I'm like, I need to overcome this. And so I'm like, okay, there's something coming. Let me get ready. Let me get all my P's and Q's. Let me make sure I got it all together. So there's no way they can discount me. Like that's where my mind goes for
mhm,
for the resilience. But to be honest, in this situation that we've got going on in our world, that wasn't available to me. And so I actually needed to ask myself a different question. It's like, who am I going to be in this moment in the face of this amount of consistent and constant attack, on not only what I do, but what I believe and what I value.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, so answering that question actually led me to profound joy. But I'm curious for you, Cammy, as you think about that on the like individual, particularly on the individual level, does that like resonate, or would you like?
Yeah, I mean, and I also have witnessed you through these years and have seen the joy. And joy in the face of ex you know, hardship at many levels. And it kind of connects to something even beyond resilience. Like we frequently think of resilience as like a bouncing back. But as people have learned more, researchers have learned more about resilience, it's actually more about like an adaptive capacity
Mm,
to shift and move and change. It's kind of what you were just saying a few minutes ago. Like, I need to be this person here. I might need to be this person here. Now, granted, I imagine there's identity-based factors there that we should and could discuss. And that at adaptive capacity in the face of ongoing stressors is resilience. Um, One thing that hasn't been as studied, there's a lot about resilience, particularly in the face of like medical issues or healthcare. Someone gets a cancer diagnosis, how are they resilient in the face of that? There's resilience for discrete incidents of trauma, an assault, a domestic violence. Um, Domestic violence, probably we wouldn't think of it as discrete, but a single episode, a car accident. But what we're talking about here, at least right now, is something more called like insidious trauma. So it's continuous, it's ongoing, it's impacting not just one state of identity, but developmental states over time, right? You get in a car accident at the age of 10, that part of your development is impacted. But when there's this insidious trauma, like think about what everyone has been going through and some groups having, different experiences around COVID, around everything, racially that's going on in our country, the change in the presidency. This is insidious trauma that changes a human being because it occurs across many developmental stages.
mm,
Um, so resilience has to be adaptive in a very evolving manner when there is that kind of insidious trauma going on. Um, and I think that I have seen people take incredible pride in their ability to adapt. Yes, CPTSD. I don't want to call anyone out. And also, Katie, if you want to speak a little bit to CPTSD, I would be more than happy to invite that in. If you're open to it, going once, going twice. My first my first supervisor said, "Oh, is Katie talking? Oh, hey, Katie."
Hi. Well, that's related to I got diagnosed with that because of ongoing years-long emotional abuse and verbal abuse from a narcissistic ex, and I didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah, so it's not like the one car accident. It's like over and over and over and over and over and nonstop. So that's what I've learned personally. But yes, now it applies to our country. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Thank you, Katie, thank you for sharing that. Also, I just want to name like getting off, getting on camera, putting on the mic and like, disclosing something, it matters and it creates community for other people to do the same. So I just want to thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't know. I had absolutely no idea what that was, and now that I do, I can put a name to it.
mhm.
It's so helpful, just like to be able to label it and say, oh, that's what this is. Yeah. So, yeah, if I can help any other people maybe relate to that and help them move through their journey of healing by being able to name it, it helps a lot. Anyway.
Thank you, friend. Um, Samira, it's interesting for me to know, at individual couple and family levels, we have a lot of labels, I think, that have also come into the forefront that have been very helpful for people. Narcissism, complex. Sometimes they're inappropriately used, and still, that's not really where I'm going with this. These labels have been very helpful for people, to be able to name, like, yeah, I was in 10 plus year domestic violence situation. Yeah, I, was in this, grew up with a caregiver who was an alcoholic, and that's called complex trauma, and this is why. I feel like at higher levels, like community and institution and cultural levels, broader societal levels, there aren't really those names. People are just kind of like, bad things are happening all around me, and I don't feel well. I don't feel okay. I don't feel good. Are there labels that people have to share their experience of what's going on at broader levels?
I mean, yeah, there are definitely labels for what people are experiencing. I mean, it's I guess if you think about it on like the interdisciplinary way, it's there's labels for that's happening at the social level. It's a sociologist will use and talk about trends that are going across, and then and likewise if I'm thinking about within the the realm of organization and team and community that I usually work with, there's definitely, ways to describe what's going on. And I think that's it's empowering for everybody. Excuse me. Sorry. Changing weather has got me all kind of congested. But I think it's beneficial for everybody to be able to name what's going on for them. And it naming something, um, there's empowerment in it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of times, when we're talking about some, situation of with resilience, you're bouncing back or you're trying to reestablish yourself because some modicum of power has been stripped or feels in threat if it's not already been stripped. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Um, that I respect and appreciate the importance of naming something, but I'm also not maybe as attached to what the name needs to be. I think the name just needs to resonate with you. And naming things, as we all know, in the extended DI world, it changes seasonally, it changes socially, it depends on what name is vibrant. And but at the moment, and there's a lot of power in creating even your own name for something, so that you can describe what's happening with you and what resonates there.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
another thing that I really wanted to like dig into, I feel, is the you kind of talked a little bit about already, which I really appreciate, is like why this is a little different. I'm curious, and like this moment is a little different, and we needed to be adaptive in our resilience. Can you share a little bit more about like what that actually looks like? And maybe even like what that might feel like in our bodies, and like how we can um not only know that we're not okay, but then start to access, I know it's a big question, but then start to access like what are our steps to becoming okay again and tapping into the version of ourselves that we want to show up.
Oh, you want me to answer that?
Mhm.
It's a very giant question. I'm super open. If other people have knowledge, expertise, personal experience in this, please help me out here. I um think that we do have good emerging research, and also I just like see this every day again, like entire family systems. I feel very privileged to work with families. So it's not just one person in a room with me making change, it's family systems making change. So that's personally what I'm drawing from. But then also, we have good research to show that um when there's collective trauma, even if it's at the family level or higher, it actually can create s- societal level growth. So, in positive ways, it can create social cohesion, it can create cultural innovation, it can. I'm just reading the chat too. Okay, I'll get to the chat in a minute. It can, really bring people to systemic change. And the beautiful part about this is that transformation at higher levels is hinged on shared meaning making and narrative construction. Um, there's this like theory called the shattered assumptions framework, and it basically says that trauma disrupts our most basic sense of the world being predictable, of the world being benevolent, and of the world having inherent meaning and purpose. So when there are societal changes or even family level changes, there is a shattering of that. And I just say this not to be like a total optimist, but it's also true. Where there is shattering, there's grief and there's hardship, and there's also a beginning for something else, for something new to step in, for something new to be created. So then naturally the next question is, okay, so we have this collective understanding, trauma happens at any level, it's shattered, then how do we rebuild? So, rebuilding, and I make the assumption that all of this must happen in community. So that's just assumption that goes without saying. Like you can't sit in a dark room with a journal and do all these things. I'm all for journaling, but if and when you choose to continue conversations with Samira and I about this, we are not going to tell you to deep breathe and journal because I wouldn't want anybody to tell me that. You can do that. You can also light a little candle, take a bubble bath, but that will not be the go-to for us. So the assumption is all this happens in community, but how do we rebuild? So there's four main places to rebuild. You have to rebuild cognitively, making sense of what happened. You have to rebuild identity-based wise, your own narrative. How is this rewriting my story? You have to find benefit, and that can be really challenging for people, particularly if we're in the thick of trauma. What is the unexpected positive here? And it's not toxic positivity. It's not looking on the bright side. It's truly finding or saying, I can't yet find what is a positive here. And then there's values clarification. What really deeply matters to me? So it's making sense. It's rewriting who we are and how we fit into this story, identifying the unexpected positive, and then also determining what truly matters. Often in a shattering, when you are forced to rebuild, you only rebuild what are the bare bones of what you really need. And that is a clarifying moment for people of what is salient and what is central to who they are and what their real purpose is. Before I go on,
Go ahead.
can we just go to can we take a minute to go to the chat, or do you want to say, go ahead?
No, go ahead.
It would be helpful, I think, perhaps okay, so Carolyn wants to hear about how multicultural professionals who are moving around the world and finding new spaces need to maintain flourishing in global organizational contexts. Oh, she has to go. Okay, so Samira, maybe touch base with Caroline about that. Bill, if you are open to sharing a bit about your story, that would be much richer coming from you rather than me going in and reading it. If you're not open to that, I'm happy to paraphrase a bit.
I mean, I'm open to it if you are.
I mean, yes, showing up and sharing your resilience in the face of a real trauma. We want to hear this.
Yeah, I don't have a need for any sort of positivity myself. I was hoping to give some to others. I'm in the middle of treatment for stage 4 non-Hodgkin's T-cell lymphoma. I'm on a fantastic drug that has got me. Well, I should probably go on camera here. There we go. That's probably easier for everybody to see. Sorry. But I now have a drug that is working really, really well. It will not continue to work well. And so I have to deal with that at some point. Up until very recently, I was a sales trainer. I was an MC, a conference leader, and I haven't worked in almost a year. And so, I'm kind of bouncing back and trying to reinvent myself and figure out this new dynamic at age 64. And, there's not a lot of options necessarily that appeal to me just yet, but I have strong resilience. I have a deep faith, and understanding that this was done for a reason for me, and I will find that place that I can become perhaps even more worthwhile for those who I touch and be around. So it's about as rough as anybody could imagine in terms of having to get through this. My wife has been extraordinary. She's been my nurse, my support, my chauffeur, everything. But 3.5 months ago, I couldn't walk. I had to have a wheelchair. And today I could probably dance and do all the things that I normally have. So, I'm cringing about the future because I know this drug won't last, but my resilience has kept me going. And I'm happy to help anyone else talk through what it is they're going through and see if I might help.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I'm curious about others' experiences. Bill, when everything that we know about post-traumatic growth, the idea that we come back not, I don't want to say newer and stronger, we come back transformed
Yeah.
following a traumatic event, right? That's a post-traumatic growth rather than a resilience framework. One of the five elements there is spirituality.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me. There is no workaround for spirituality. It doesn't necessarily have to be religiosity, but spirituality is a cornerstone in resilience, post-traumatic growth, in coming out clearer. And I'm just curious, people here, and also Samira, and the thing is, their definition is broad in post-traumatic growth. It just is having a better understanding of spiritual matters. That's all it says. But I just wonder what youth imagine the role of spirituality to be, Samira, when you think about that, and also other people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely, I'd love to hear what others have to say too. And I feel like I can actually start to address Caroline's um question in this response as well. And Bill, thank you. Thank you for bringing for sharing your story and being willing to support us in this conversation by by with your offering. I feel like the and the idea, if we're working with the idea of resilience, is who are you going to be in the face of X? Then that's true for an organization that is changing or doesn't want to change and or doesn't want to move forward and address itself. That's true for what we've got going on in our how are we going to show up with whatever the situation is. And so like I think the role of spirit is a part. I connect spirituality very much to motivation and or hope or whatever it is that kind of con that is continuing to propel you forward outside of like the necessities of what you need to do to survive, right? There's some other thing that typically has that's calling you forward. That's the reason that you got into it in the first place. That's the excuse me. That's the thing that lights you up when it happens. All of that is connected to our spirit. It's beyond, it's like the integration of our mind and our bodies, right? So that it's a necessary piece, but one certainly in organizations that is not always acknowledged. But within ourselves, it's kind of like if you're not using a religious framework, if you're using some another kind of framework to talk about it, sometimes it's not always a word for it, but it's an experience that you know when you have it. So I'll say that like the w when I know I'm shook is when I'm losing that sense of light. And the like again, the light isn't just like, oh, but this is still like, oh, there's a possibility that the light is something that I carry and I bring to the situation, regardless of what the situation is. And it's the clarity and it's the insight, it's the power in the moment, even if it's hard. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. What y'all thinking? Or what do you respond to that, Cammy?
Um, Sahana, what you're saying in the chat, it would be helpful, I think, for people to hear that. Are you open to talking about it?
Yeah, I I'm a Trader Joe, so I can I mean I can't put my video on, but I can just share. Yeah, I also work as a therapist and am an immigrant, brown woman, and so when systems at this point are trying to, get you to silence yourself or polarize you, what I hear from a lot of my clients, or people around is just like, I'm only concerned about my job, my family, because there is so much uncertainty. And I don't have time for my friends' problems, and I don't have time for my mom's problems. And there's this sense of, um, everyone's favorite word is boundary right now. And so everyone's like, I've got to protect, boundary myself in. At the same time, you're losing connection, and that connection can build resilience or hope. And so, yeah, that's just something I'm constantly thinking about, which is, um, how can resilience also be a collective effort rather than it being an individual exhausting effort, because it can feel like burning out. And how do we create that balance between being able to engage, like people coming in today, even on a Wednesday evening, while being tired, and willing to share personal stories as well as save that energy. Yeah, so that just is always a conflict for me, both as a person and as a therapist. Yeah.
Sahana and Kate, I'm coming right to you, but I'm having a visceral reaction to this boundary situation. Because
It's too
what I'm
much.
sensing, yeah. But what I'm sensing, I know y'all are therapists and you gotta be with people in that way, which is beautiful. So do that. But I'm saying, like, y'all, if you I feel that if you are in a situation where you need to be boundaried with your community as you are working through um as you are working through difficulty, you are not authentic with your community.
I 100% agree with that.
And perhaps that is not actually your community. And you will need to seek out your community until you can repair those relationships such that you can be authentic in that community with your family, with your friends, with your coworker, whoever your that makeup is. Because that is a source of your power. Y'all, if you've ever been in a situation where you just sat with somebody and you just felt their energy and their energy energized you, like that's possible on a larger on a scale that has us be able to like move through things with so much power. And I feel like what our default is, especially in these kinds of moments, because like what's also happening out in the world is meant to divide, to keep people in fear, to keep people in like to people keeping like calling out their neighbors and not in a supportive way, right? Like that's what's happening here. And so like defaulting to that and cutting yourself off from the opportunity of the strength in and the power in each other, I think is allowing this kind of fear to perpetuate. Kate,
Totally.
please. Kate, tell me.
First of all, hi, beautiful people. I raised my hand as possibly the lone sociologist on the call, and my background is in psychology and social psychology, but I've gotten my master's and now I'm working on my PhD, and my research is on grieving as a relational organizing tool in climate frontline communities. Particularly trying to expand out from the narrow lens of just trauma informed. And as we know, disaster is a rupture point, right? Disaster is a very specific, like we're talking about natural hazards and disasters. There are moments in which We can look really closely at social vulnerabilities because they're man-made disasters. We can look really closely at all of these markers that we're wondering about when it comes to societal resilience. And part of my drive to it was I myself, as a disabled person from disaster experience, disabled person, from communities who for years have been shouting, we want resistance, not resilience, who are really angry about societal demands for resilience as an excuse to just continue to pound on the least, positioned amongst our society. And I want to just sort of some of the things that came up when Sahana was talking. We know from disaster research that the largest marker of resilience, knowing that I just said what I feel about resilience, is social cohesion. Is that like all being like, yes, money matters to come back from a hurricane or a wildfire. Like, yes, money matters, but all things being equal, the thing that matters the most, even when you're doing these sort of interaction effects, is social cohesion. And social cohesion comes from not just like a sense of belonging, but an actual like active participation within a community. That you have to have this sort of like, yes, the sense of community. It has to be a safe sense of community, particularly for dealing with processing large amounts of grief, like where your grief and grieving is seen as valid and not disenfranchised, right? Not said like, oh, who you're grieving isn't worthy or what you're grieving isn't, you aren't worthy. But the big thing is that you actually have to have a network of sort of participatory community members of various levels of individuals giving and receiving. It has to be fully reciprocal. Um, and that sort of independent space doesn't work. I also come from a critical lens, so I'm very much in the framework of like power systems at play, structural inequality, and to me that relates to what was being said before about the sense of the spirituality, in the sense that spirituality is just something that's bigger than you, right? Like spirituality is something that just is bigger than you and allows you to imagine a world beyond beyond the despair. And we see that in disaster response in communities that integrate what I call grief aligned organizing are ones that don't just sit in the despair, they sit in the sort of like community storytelling of what it can be. That sort of like active meaning making together are the ones who have, those high levels of cohesion. If we're talking about, not just on an individual level. So I wanted to throw some of that knowledge into the room.
Hey, thank you. It causes me to think it's like a light in the storm. We have fight, flight, freeze, and then we have this beautiful research around tend and befriend, that there are people who come together in community and they tend and care and they befriend each other, and that's how they engage in the face of trauma and hardship. And totally like thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up to everything that you said. Yes. Like there's a parallel dismantling of oppression and also building up of community that's doing something different. Oh, Cheryl was saying something in the chat. Cheryl, are you open to, Alexis, maybe that begs the question, are we aligned on the definition of community for oneself? That's I think a really important question. It'd be helpful maybe for Alexis to say more about that and Cheryl to talk a bit about this idea of interdependence. Alexis, are you open to talking a little bit more about what you mean there?
Sure. So I'm an executive leadership coach, and so I work with leaders trying to navigate corporate landscapes, navigate spaces. And so someone else had mentioned this as well. Those are typically careers, professions that anchor to the individual accomplishments, individual achievements. You have to look out for yourself. It's a lot of competition that happens within the corporate landscape. So, Samira was saying earlier about boundaries. A lot of us now are receiving information through social media platforms where people are providing their versions of definitions for things. when we as individuals have not created those definitions for ourselves. So someone may say, hey, I need to create a boundary, but maybe never have created a definition for what community means. Maybe I need boundaries for people who are unsafe versus I don't need boundaries for people who nurture me and, to Kate's point, where I have that true social cohesion. So that's what I mean by we as individuals creating and crafting and anchoring to what our self-defined North Star, if you will, is for how we show up with the people in our lives.
Hmm. Hmm. And that definitely echoes what Sahana was saying. I think it's that if when there's not a well-defined community, boundaries lose their meaning, and also the idea of this inherent competition as well. How can we possibly create community when everyone's competing for each other, and then who are we setting boundaries with, and then who are we letting in, and how are we letting them in?
And competing for resources.
Resources, yeah, yeah. Cheryl, did you want to speak to interdependence? Hmm.
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so I think something that's been studied, I love that there's sociologists and psychologists and like it's because humanity is just so complicated and these studies are really important. One area that's really commonly studied is like college admissions, right? And what there's a study that I've been reading about a lot recently, which is um people who have advantaged backgrounds, so people who are affluent, who have privileges, who don't have to deal with disadvantages or oppression, they are basically, they have this worldview of like, I need to reach my potential. I want to make sure that I get to the level that I need to get to. I need to be able to do the things that I want to do. And college admissions, they surveyed like admissions reviewers, and they favored those types of personalities versus if you come from more interdependent backgrounds, you're thinking about the community, you're thinking about your family, you're thinking we need to help society be better, we need to overcome these challenges. And you would think that like, of course, after the college level, it's only going to get worse. So then you find in the corporate level, the performance reviews incentivize people who are independently motivated. So they're independent. Like one thing that I've talked to you, Dr. Cammy, about was is like this idea of like knowing your own feelings and motivations. Some people didn't have the safety to really experience and know their own motivations, and their external motivations, like their safety, would depended on the environments that they were in. So you're more community focused. But then when you get into the workplace, you find that it's the people who have had the space to just focus on themselves and their self-fulfillment and realizing their own potential that are the ones being rewarded. And so that, I think that reward system needs to change. We need more leaders that are more interdependent, that think about community, that value community. Because when they say, oh, we need to have more diverse voices in the mix, there's a lot of reasons why once you get them there, there's a lot of attrition because they don't have a place to stay.
Hmm.
And then since we're here, there's like a squirrel that's like at my window. So I just wanted to, this is like a, yeah, there it is. Anyways,
Oh,
anyways, but
sweet
that's not,
little
yeah,
being.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and so yeah, but that's totally, I feel like what Alexis was saying, what a lot of people are talking about here is that like we undervalue community because people who are like self-motivated feel like they're exceptional. They feel like they're like, like I feel like those of us in this call, we persevere because we have hope that people can be better. And then there's people who persevere because they just think they're so exceptional, they deserve it. You know, that's the difference.
Hmm. Thank you, Cheryl.
I think, and Cheryl, I think even that was kind of aligned with Kate's definition of spirituality in that way, right? There's something bigger that's calling us forward, that we believe in, that we're working toward. That there is a collective we that is working towards that, even if it's not, even if we need to find those people and connect with them. Um, I want to offer, as we're going to be wrapping up soon, to please put in the chat any other questions, ideas, thoughts, things that have been kind of lingering that you're like, I'm sitting with this thing, but it doesn't really feel, but I'm not sure if I want to speak, put in the chat. Don't walk away without there being completion for you around this conversation. And we'll make sure that like we can either wrap it up in here or we can include in the recording a response. But I also just I wanted to share an offering that Dr. Cammy and I have been working on that we want to put out into the community and invite you into if it feels right for you. So this is an offering that we kind of created because something that I need to move through this moment. And it was really like recognizing the with the shift of this professional foundation and like really looking for a new home, whether that is professionally or overall in terms of how your identity, how you're engaging in the world, creating an opportunity to kind of excavate and redefine what that looks like, right? So we've designed um, this 6 week cohort. We call it Clear Voice, Clear Path, that allows us to honor what we've lost in this constant kind of turmoil and change. And then stand in a more firm ground around excavating and creating this new story for who we are going to be and who we are being in the face of what's coming at us. And to do so, like I'm calling it with joy because as I did this process, that's what called me forward. So whatever I think of, you know, me being unstoppable and untouchable with, it's like you want to take my joy. Oh, you're doing this now. That's not going to kill my joy, but I will stand in solidarity with these people. But I will show up for my community in this way. But I will still do this, and I'm going to do it joyfully, even with what you've got going on, right? So that was for me what was calling me forward, and I think it's important for everybody to declare what that is for them. And then the idea of identity reconstruction, authentic leadership, whatever the disruption has looked like, what is authenticity then for you now? Knowing that you have lost something. And I think not like acknowledging that you are probably grieving some loss and being able to like to name that to Cammy's point earlier. And so you can build on the foundation of what's next, I think is super important. So that's what this offering is like. We're going to do in super small cohorts so that we have the benefit of connecting deeply with each other. And you're going to tap into your deep expertise and create what we call your mini masterclass, so that you can be clear on what's next. Yeah, Cammy, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just like I'm reading the chat, and I'm seeing, people talk about what they've been through, what they're going through. I was adopted 65 years ago and it was a traumatic experience. I want to understand that better. I'm in the nonprofit space and I'm, feeling marginalized. Um, the ideas around co-housing, like how do I move through grief associated with medical trauma? Like these are all the undercurrent that we want to create space for is all these different pieces of vital life force content. We wanted to create a process where each person could come with disparate pieces of content and be able to have a vehicle to understand, to move through, to share with each other, to build community. And so I just wanted to note, I'm seeing all these very different experiences in the chat and wanting to just punctuate that this very therapist of me container is meant to hold the diversity of the human experience with a single shared goal of understanding, exploring, extricating values. Um, to think of Yolanda from Colombia, the archaeology of self. Continue.
You said it. That's what this is. And like I think just like for like logistics wise, we know like this is a real tenuous time for people financially. And so we are really just doing our best to make this accessible and have kind of created a range of tiers that can allow for you to make this happen. Also, Dr. Cammy has beautifully, generously, as she is in life, offered to two scholarships to participate here. So if this is like otherwise not accessible to you and you really want to join, you can email Youssef, and that's all you got to do. If you want to be a part of it, just email Youssef. And you, particularly if you are um, if you've experienced PTSD in your life, we invite you to be in this conversation with us. So that is that. As we kind of close out, Cammy, what do
Yeah,
you
I
want?
think we just had someone in the chat say, Yusuf, will there be some kind of link for this? Like maybe if you could you just maybe with the
I'm gonna
whole
drop
group,
the link in the chat.
a link to the program? Okay, cool. No, I just feel so grateful. Like I had kind of woken up, it's vulnerable to do something like this. And I woke up and I was like, okay, worst case scenario, Samira and I just talk for an hour. Worst case scenario, Samira and I just talk for an hour. And then I was so overwhelmed by how many people wanted to be here. And I think it's reflective of the fact that there's still a light for people who want something different in what feels like so many walls are coming in at multiple levels of the system. And so I feel grateful that you wanted to spend time with me and that you shared so much. And I hope that I can see you all again.
And thank you, Dr. Cammy, for making space for this conversation, for grounding us, for sharing your wisdom and insight. As always, you never leave a conversation with Dr. Cammy without some opening for yourself. So I much, much love and appreciation for you.
Thank you, Samira. Love you very, very much, friend.
Oh, you know it's mutual. So we hope to see y'all either in the cohorts if that feels a fit for you, and or in our next roundtable, because we know we in this for the long, because this is our reality and we're making sure that we're building community together through it. Thank you so much, y'all. I'll stay back a little bit if anybody has any questions, but I know Dr. Cammy, you've got to move to your next obligation. So thank you.
Thank you, friends.